What's going on, traders? We got a lot to talk about in this video. You are not going to want to miss this. Before we start, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts below. Let's get into the video. So, in this video, we're going to take things slow. Okay, no diddy. Gosh, I am starting off terrible already. But we're going to start off and just really take things into perspective. We're going to take our time here because I want you guys to understand that something's off about this market. Okay, something's really off about this market right now. And this is not me coping. I'm going to point out a few things that I think is really bothersome. And you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. I really enjoy you guys' comments. It's starting to feel like, we're joking, we're having fun, we talk crap in the comments. But I love seeing those side conversations as well. So let me know what you guys think at the end of this video. And so right now, we're looking at the NASDAQ, and we talked about the NASDAQ going to 22,300, and it looks like we're on the verge of heading towards that level. Now, what is the significance of 22,300? Well, this is where Jerome Powell originally sold off the market. And so I do imagine that if we are going to head higher, right now we're at resistance at around this 22,100 area, 22,120, give or take. If we do decide to pump higher, I do imagine that we're going to head towards 22,300, and then we'll have to see what happens from there. And so things do look good when it comes to the Nasdaq. We look at the ES. In our last video, we talked about, how the ES, if the ES gets above 6,100, I do think it's going to squeeze towards that 6,200 level. I was just giving a target, a psych level target. I wasn't giving a specific target, but if we're looking at the ES daily time frame, we are trading within this rising wedge pattern. I mean, you see it here. We rejected here, we bounced here, we bounced here. And so this will be a rising wedge pattern, or you could even argue that it's a rising channel. Regardless, it's a bearish pattern as long as we stay within this range. And so it is important to note that we are heading towards the top of this pattern, right? We're heading towards that around 6170, 6160. We're heading towards the top of this pattern, and it's important to note that we could very much reject from this area. And so if we're, doing the math here, we're looking at, NQ. Once again, we're at resistance on the NQ, and our next wall is at 2300. And so if we, correlate that with ES, we might be near the top here, right? But, don't run with that. It's not a guarantee or anything. Just hear me out for the rest of the video. We look at Let's look at Bitcoin real quick. Okay, of course we're going to go into the ETS, but just, let's just get Bitcoin out the way. So someone asked me, well, why is Bitcoin staying still while everything else is going up, right? Or why is NQ going up, ES going up, but Bitcoin is just sitting here? Well, that's because Bitcoin moves off the possibility of inflation decreasing. It doesn't move off stagflation. And right now, I guess you can argue that we're in the middle of stagflation, right? So that's why Bitcoin is really not moving. And like I said, as long as Bitcoin stays between 92K and 99K, I really don't have much for you guys. But I just want to answer that question real quick. Until we get more data on inflation, on whether it's decreasing or not, I don't imagine Bitcoin is going to do much from here. So, yeah, that's pretty much the answer to the question there. But moving on, we look at the SPY, right? SPY. Right now, the SPY is, we go to the 4 hour time frame here, and right now SPY is at resistance, right? We broke below this rising wedge pattern, which, by the way, the projected move has not played out on this rising wedge pattern. Believe it or not, the projected move is all the way towards 584. Why 584? Well, we have a gap that needs to be filled at 584. Now, gaps aren't mandatory to be filled, but if we're talking about the rising wedge pattern, if we're taking this pattern seriously, if you are the type of trader that believes in patterns or whatever the case may be, we're looking at a move towards 584 if the projected move for this rising wedge pattern plays out. But right now, we're at resistance at around 610. We get above 610, then obviously we're at all-time highs, right? And we can start heading as high as 616 on the SPY, right? So things are looking good for the bulls, right? They're looking great when we're looking at the SPY, we're looking at the ES, we're looking at the NQ, but again, we're at key levels here, right? Triple Qs, pretty much the same thing. Now, triple Qs, we're at resistance, or we're at this trend line here. And if you're wondering where this trend line is coming from, we go to the weekly time frame, we zoom out, and as you guys can see, it gets a little sloppy around this area, but as you guys can see, we bounced here, we bounced here, and then we do this little roller coaster here. Now, I want you guys to pay attention to this, right? I want you to really Think about this. Every time we break below this line or every time we break above this line, we do the complete opposite, right? We break below it, we go back above it. We break below it, go back above it. We break below it, go back above it, so on and so forth. So we're just playing games within this range here, right? So even if let's go to the daily time frame. So even if let's say we do break above this line, this trend line here, there's a good chance that we may just roll over and break back below it, and therefore we start, heading towards those gap fills towards the downside. So something to keep in mind here, right? But triple Qs looks great. And so far, we're at the bottom of this trend line. Can we break above it? Absolutely. We've broken above it before plenty of times, but every time we break above it, you see what happens. We roll over, we rolled over here, we rolled over here. And granted, the rollover isn't anything significant. I mean, but it is something to take into consideration given the current conditions of the market. And so we look at the VIX. And I promise this is all getting to a point. Okay. So just bear with me here. We get to the VIX. We talk about the VIX all the time. Right now, the VIX is undervalued, right? It's undervalued. It's in really dangerous territory here, right? Really dangerous territory. Let's go to the weekly time frame to put this into perspective. Okay, look where we are on the VIX. We bounced here. We bounced here, right? We bounced here. We bounced here. We bounced here, right? And then we did this little, slight breakdown, but eventually we broke back above it. We broke above this resistance here, which is now support. We bounced here, we bounced here, and look where we are. All right, this is where we are on the VIX. And remember, I told you guys, anytime the VIX gets below 15, or not below, but between 15 and 14, we either bounce or we spike towards the upside, meaning that the market typically will do the opposite of the VIX or the inverse of the VIX, right? So here, we bounced here. This is the daily time frame. We bounced here. We bounced here. We gapped up here, right? We hit this line again. We gapped up here. Here, we bounced up, and then look where we are. All right. So hopefully everything is making sense. It's starting to get put together here. But that's not the thing that's bothering me. What's bothering me is that triple Qs it went higher. That's great, right? We went all the way down to about 522, and we went all the way to 535. We look at the SPY, 598, right? We talk about this key level all the time. We broke all the way down to 598. Let's actually go to the 4 hour time frame so it just looks cooler that way, right? We broke all the way down to 498. Right here, bull stepped in, waked us back up all the way to 609, 610. You can argue 610 if you want. My issue is this is great, sure. If you're trading the SPY, you're trading the Qs, or you're investing into them, whatever you're doing, that's great, right? But we're not seeing this correlate across the market. And what do I mean by that? We look at Microsoft, right? We look at Microsoft, which is one of the Mag 7, and look where Microsoft is. It's still it's still breaking down slowly but surely. It's still at 410. Again, we're talking about the SPY going from 598 to 609. We'll just say 610, all right? We're talking about the SPY going from 598 to 610. And you're telling me this is all we get from Microsoft? Google, another Mag 7. Google is still dropping. It's still dropping, guys. Did we get some life from Google? Sure. I mean, if you want to call this life, but we go to the daily time frame here, and you're telling me, once again, we go from 598 on the SPY all the way to 610. And this is what we get, right? We go to Amazon. I mean, we could just keep going, right? We go to Amazon. Amazon, I would argue, is a good buying opportunity here. If we're trusting the market, right? I would argue that Amazon is a good buying opportunity here, and we can head back towards the 237, towards this gap fill right here. We're at the bottom of this rising wedge. We can bounce here. But again, we went from 598 on the SPY or the triple Qs. We went from 522 on the triple Qs all the way to 535, and you're telling me nothing, right? But there are some names that are benefiting from this. We look at Nvidia, and you can argue that it's not a great move or anything like that. It all depends on your perspective because we did drop all the way to like 113, and Nvidia has been recovering since. But again, you would think that Nvidia would have filled this gap by now, all the way at, you know, of once the SPY hit 610, you would think that Nvidia would start filling this gap by now. And I do think Nvidia is going to fill this gap within the next week or two, but still, why are we waiting? What are we waiting on here? Why is it taking so long for us to fill this gap, given the move that we've seen between today and yesterday, right? And again, I think Nvidia is going to fill this gap. I think it's going to happen between this week, next 2 weeks or so, right? Before earnings, if anything. And so we look at, Apple, and we'll talk about Nvidia in a bit because I know you guys are looking at that, but we're looking at Apple. I would say Apple has probably benefited the most out of everything, right? But we look at Apple, daily time frame. We can actually go to the 4 hour time frame. Apple is at the top of this descending triangle. You reject it here, you reject it here, you reject it here, and then you bounce multiple times here. You got a flat bottom here. But right now, Apple is at the top of this descending triangle, and not only that, but is at resistance here, right? But Apple, I would argue, has benefited the most off this move to the upside. We look at Meta. I mean, Meta is just, Meta is just Meta, right? Meta is doing its own thing. No matter what drop we get, Meta continues to climb, right? But we look at Meta. Meta's pumping, sure. But again, when we're looking at the overall market, right, and we're talking about a move on the SPY from 598 to 610, we're talking about a move on the triple Qs from, 522. I mean, you can go as low as 517, all the way to 535, and you're telling me that that's all we get from the Mag 7 so far? Maybe it's a delayed move. You guys let me know, but maybe it's a delayed move. Maybe we're waiting on something. Maybe we're waiting on more news. Who knows, right? Because it just seems like the market isn't bothered by any news, whether it's bad or good. And when I say the market, I mean just pretty much everything, especially when we're talking about the tech sector. We look at the Dow Jones. We look at the Dow Jones, and the Dow Jones looks okay, but again, we're trading within this symmetrical triangle here. Let's get rid of this. We're trading in this symmetrical triangle here, and we haven't even broken out on the Dow Jones, right? I do think the Dow Jones is going to head towards 452, and then we'll have to see what happens from there, right where these guys are once again. But we have a lot of gaps towards the downside when we're talking about the Dow Jones, right? But again, my overall point here is that we're seeing all this movement towards the upside when it comes to the SPY, triple Qs, and some given names. But other than that, it's not correlating across the board. And you would think that we will get exactly that. We will get some life across the board. Bitcoin is staying still, because of, stagflation or whatever the case may be. Microsoft hasn't done anything. Google hasn't done anything. Amazon hasn't done anything. We made a 10, 15 point move today, well, between 2 days, and nothing, right? And I think that's concerning. And what that tells me is that a lot of the stock market is overvalued, right? I think I wouldn't even say overvalued, overextended. Sorry, that's a much better word. I think a lot of the stock market, or this is telling us that a lot of these stocks, or the stock market as a whole, is overextended because a lot of these names are not moving. And again, maybe it's a delayed move. Maybe I'm speaking too early, right? But you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. And so let's look at Nvidia, right? Let's get deep into things, okay? Nvidia. So we go to the daily time frame on Nvidia. We're looking at this rising wedge pattern, and it looks like we're just simply going to retest this rising wedge pattern. Keep in mind, the measured move for this rising wedge pattern is 100. I gave you guys the first target of 113. We hit that target right on the dot. We bounced off of that, and I believe that was probably around the 200 SMA is around 120. But regardless, we bounced off that, right? And we're heading back towards the upside to retest the bottom of this rising wedge pattern and potentially fill this gap, which I do think is going to happen pretty soon. Now, the highest we can go on Nvidia is 148, and then I do think we're going to see some type of rejection from that range, right? So something like this, where we just get in this area, and then these bears. Okay, so keep in mind these bears right here, These grizzlies right here, these silverback gorillas, these diddlers, they're just all over the place right here. Okay, they're foaming at the mouth. But the fact that we're taking so long to make this move happen is very telling. It's very, very telling that we're waiting so long to just fill this gap. Despite the move that we've seen today, we're waiting so long to fill this gap. Tells me that we don't have much upside left, right? And I can be wrong here. I don't think we have much upside left. I think the market is waiting on Nvidia or semiconductors as a whole to fill these gaps, and then we start heading back towards the downside. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking, right? But right now, Nvidia, your key levels is 136. You get above 136, you're heading towards 138. After that, 140 is your psych level, 141 after that, and then you're heading towards this gap fill at around 143. Okay, again, I do think Nvidia has the potential to head higher towards 145, 148. What causes that? I have no clue. But it's clear that the market is waiting on something. All right. It's very clear. Whether it's Trump, tariff news, whatever the case may be, I don't know. But it's waiting on something. Apple. Apple's at the top of this descending triangle. All right. I don't know why it keeps doing this. It just keeps moving the line. But you go to the 4 hour time frame and it's just clear as day. You're at the top of this descending triangle, which is a very bearish pattern. And you're talking about a move to 180 if this thing breaks. Probably lower than that. All right. I don't think Apple's going to get much lower than 180. I think 180 is a beautiful buying opportunity. Can Apple see a little bit more upside? Absolutely. But again, I think it's very limited. I think upside is very limited. We look at Tesla. I actually forgot to talk about Tesla. Tesla bounced off that, what was that, 320 level, 320. I don't think Tesla's done dropping. I don't. I think Tesla is going to head towards the low 300s. It's just a matter of when that happens. Okay. I don't think it's done. All right. That's pretty much all I have for Tesla. Can Tesla head higher? I mean, if Tesla breaks back above 360, then you're looking to move towards the 380s. All right, but 360 is your key level here on Tesla. But again, guys, I mean, you guys let me know what you think. I just think it's really, really telling. Maybe I'm talking too soon. Maybe I'm speaking too soon. I just think it's really, really telling just how we're pumping, at least the ETFs are pumping, at least the futures and ETFs are pumping, but we're not getting follow through across the board, right? We're looking at ES, we got this rising wedge pattern. We're near the top of this rising wedge pattern, by the way, right? We look at NQ, we're really close to that 2300. We are at resistance currently on the NQ as well. We broke above the symmetrical triangle, and it looks like we can head towards 2300. And then from there, I imagine that these bears are going to step in, if not soon. All right. And that's pretty much all I have. Okay, that's pretty much all I have. We can look at the Russell real quick because I get spammed about the Russell every single day. Russell still below resistance. Okay, still below resistance. So the fact that people are panicking, I don't know. It's still below resistance. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just trading in a range between 220 and 227. Hasn't gone anywhere. All right, but that's pretty much all I have. Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments below. Um, I really enjoy, again, I really enjoy seeing you guys have conversations in the comments. It's really uplifting. And then of course we joke, you guys seem to love my jokes in the videos. I try I try to, make a joke here and there, but I think it's a very telling matter the fact that a lot of these stocks are just not following along with the triple Qs and the SPY. Do we have a little more upside to go? I do think that's possible. I do think that's going to be the case. Do I think upside is limited from this point on? I do think so. And I think the VIX is telling you everything you need to know. The fact that the VIX is right here now, either we break the pattern that we've been following for, I don't know, since August on the VIX, since last August 2024, probably so earlier than that, all the way since July, we've been respecting this level on the VIX. Since last July, we've bounced off this level every single time. So when someone tells you you can't plot the VIX follows a clear pattern, guys. Bounced here, bounced here, bounced here, it broke below here, but eventually it reclaimed it. And when it reclaimed it like crazy. Okay. Bounced here, bounced here. I mean, it respects this $15 level, 14.8 $15 level. Okay. So all I'm saying is be careful. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Discord link is in the description below if you want access to our trades and our Discord bots. Um, By the way, I talked about those 579 puts a few videos ago on the SPY. Those are still lingering in my head. Okay, I haven't forgot about those puts. Those are still bothering me, and they expire for February 21st next week. It is a 3 day weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if we see somewhat of a sell off before 3 day. I would really be surprised if institutions and even retail, a lot of retail, hold their calls heading into the weekend. But bulls are bulls at this point. They don't care about anything at this point. So, that's all I have for this video, traders. Let me know what you think. Until the next video, have a good one.